Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to St Mary's Vicarage here in Sixpenny Handley on this Wednesday, the 31st of March in Holy Week. And I hope you're all okay. I hope you enjoyed the glorious weather we had yesterday. Sadly, I spent most of it in my in the office yesterday on Zoom meetings and such like, but I did get to sit outside in the garden for a little bit and have a couple of cups of tea. By the evening, by the time we got to our online Zoom PCC meeting, because this office is south facing with this lovely big window in front of me here, it got really, really warm. So I'd sort of, I had to go and take my clerical collar off because my sort of thermometer here on my desk was saying that it was about 25 degrees in this room. So yeah, lovely day yesterday, and sorry I couldn't be with you yesterday morning. I had one of those sort of meetings that suddenly has to happen, unfortunately, with a diocesan colleague. So I was sort of wrapped up with that. And Monday was great too. Of course, the relaxation of the rules and regulations, which was great. And a nice sunny day, so I got to meet up with an artist friend of mine. We went down to see the sea to talk about an exhibition that she's preparing to put on in Winchester, and how she's got to move to a new studio and such like. So that was sort of interesting. But it was just good to be able to talk to somebody different face to face. So that was good. But there were quite a few people out and about on Monday, and we're certainly looking forward to being able to have a few people round the vicarage garden in the coming days and weeks as things are lifted. So looking ahead to this week, to this Holy Week, just say there's nothing happening tomorrow, Maunday service. There won't be a broadcast tomorrow, and the reason for that is I have to travel to Slough very early tomorrow morning. My mother lives just outside Slough and Windsor, and she hasn't been too well, sadly, and I have to take her to a hospital appointment to see her consultant tomorrow. So I've got to be bright and early, up at about 5 a.m. and on the road before 6 in order to get up to Slough to collect her in time to be able to take her to see her consultant. So there won't be a broadcast tomorrow, and we're not doing a Maunday Thursday service in the evening, which would normally be a Holy Communion with foot washing and such like, because even with the cessation of some of the regulations, that won't really be allowed. However, this morning I've already been working on our Good Friday services. There's two options I mentioned on Good Friday. If you want something a bit more static, you can go down to St Rumbold's Pentridge, and they're going to have an hour's meditation down there from 2 to 3 o'clock. If you're feeling a little bit more energetic and you would like to sing, we're going to do the Stations of the Cross, or an act of witness, on Good Friday. The idea is to meet outside the church. We're going to use the Stations of the Cross as a sort of basis to reflect and meditate on. I've chosen 4 hymns that we'll break up and we'll sing as we go around, and we will more than likely carry the cross that we've got, the large church cross. I'll probably carry that. We might do a bit of a passion play thing, and I might put on my white robe or something. And what we're going to do is we're going to walk round, socially distanced, around the fields behind the church, and sort of go down towards Deanland, and then sort of come back up and back round. We can't go too far in the amount of time that we've got. Hopefully the weather will be okay, but if you'd like to come along to that, then please meet outside St Mary's Church at 2 o'clock on Good Friday afternoon. Easter Saturday, as I say, there's an opportunity to join in with the service of light, either at home or up here at the church. The liturgy, the little order of service that you can do at home, and the same one we'll use up at the church, is being printed in the Downsman, so you should hopefully get that in the next day or two if you haven't had it already. So you can do that in your garden or inside your home, this service of light, which we'll do at 8 o'clock. We'll also be doing it at 8 o'clock up here at the church. Outside, we're going to light the Easter bonfire, bless the new Easter candle, take that into church, and just sort of bring in Easter and this idea of the resurrection light pushing out the darkness. And we're inviting people to have a candle, either an electric one or an electric light or a physical candle, and to light that and put it in their window for the next 50 days after Easter, because that leads us up to the what we call the Festival of Pentecost, when the gift of the Holy Spirit comes. And we hope, in a sense, these lights shining in people's windows at Handley in the evening as we see them in Peter, but just a reminder of the power of the resurrection and the light pushing the darkness out. And hopefully, in a sense, highly symbolic as we slowly move out of lockdown to something of a more normal experience. So that's Easter Eve. On Easter Sunday, there'll be two services, physical services. There'll be a Holy Communion here at 10 o'clock at Handley. That will also be live streamed on Facebook, so you can join in with that at home. That'll be a Holy Communion service. No hymns, unfortunately, because we're inside, but there will be some music. And then also down at Pentridge at 11:15, they will have a prayer book Holy Communion service, which will be said. So that's what we're looking forward to. I notice some Easter eggs have started to, little Easter eggs have started to appear on the cherry tree. I think the Booth household have been making their Easter eggs. So if you'd like to paint a decorative Easter egg, you know, blow an egg out or make one from cardboard or whatever, and you want to paint it and decorate it, please hang it on the cherry tree outside the church. Unfortunately, it's not in bloom yet. Last year when we did this, the cherry tree was in full glorious bloom and it was most spectacular, but it isn't in bloom yet. But do hang the cherry trees or little eggs on the cherry trees. And also, if you want to make an Easter garden, either the youngsters or if you're young at heart, if you want to make a small Easter garden on a tray and then bring it up to church, the flower team will incorporate that into the flower arrangements they are going to be putting around the church. So hopefully lots of different ways that we can sort of engage with this great festival of Easter. Now, that being said, obviously we are in Holy Week, so I'm going to move to the Gospel reading for today. And of course, the Gospel readings in Holy Week all hinge round, in a sense, the last few days, obviously, of Christ's life and his time with the disciples, his betrayal, his arrest and his execution, death, and of course then resurrection. So the Gospel reading today is from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 26, beginning to read at verse 14. And this reading is entitled, "The Son of Man is going to his fate. As the scriptures say, he will, but alas for the man to whom he is betrayed." One of the 12, the man called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What are you preparing to give me, if I hand him over to you?" They paid him 30 silver pieces, and from that moment he looked for an opportunity to betray him. Now on the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus to say, "Where do you want us to make the preparations for you to eat the Passover?" "Go to so-and-so in the city," he replied, "and say to him, 'The master says my time is near. It is at your house I am keeping the Passover with my disciples.'" The disciples did what Jesus told them and prepared the Passover. When evening came, he was at table with the 12 disciples. And while they were eating, he said, "I tell you solemnly, one of you is about to betray me." They were greatly distressed and started asking him in turn, "Not I, Lord, surely?" He answered, "Someone who has dipped his hand into the dish with me will betray me. The Son of Man is going to his fate, as the scriptures say he will. But alas for the man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. Better for that man if he had never been born." Judas, who was to betray him, asked him in turn, "Not I, Rabbi, surely?" "Where are your they are your own words," answered Jesus. This is the gospel of the Lord. the betrayal of Jesus by Judas is a very powerful moment in the Holy Week story, and it's something that writers, theologians, poets, and artists have sought to depict and reflect on. In a sense, the sort of first black and white way that we might look at Judas is that, you know, in a sense, he's the bad guy, he's the rotten apple in the bunch, and you know, he betrayed Jesus. And of course, we know that later on in the story, Judas commits suicide as a result. But in a sense, I think that sort of very black and white, stark image and understanding of Judas is to miss a great deal of the important subtlety that I think is going on there, and in a sense how it reflects on our own lives and our own relationships with other people. I remember seeing a film a few years ago, and I was trying to remember the title of the film. As you can imagine, as a clergyman, I've seen so many films about Jesus and the Passion and such like. But there was a film, I think it might have been Martin Scorsese's Last Temptation of Christ, which was a bit controversial at the time. Anyhow, Judas is depicted as a very different character in this film, and is actually depicted as an even closer friend than Peter is. Of course, in most of the narratives, in the gospel narratives and in film and art and such like, we're always sort of led down the road that, you know, in a sense, Peter is very, very close to Jesus. So of course we have John, which is known as the beloved disciple, and Judas is seen as a bit of an outcast, an outsider, I mean. But in this movie, Judas is actually the closest disciple to Jesus, and very, very concerned with what is happening. And yes, he's clearly not perfect, and we see that in the film. But what was interesting in this depiction is that what leads Judas to betray Jesus was, in a sense, from a misguided love, basically, a misguided love. That he wasn't just betraying Jesus for monetary gain or to save his own back. And what happens in the film is that Judas is so concerned now about what is happening. He can see more than the other disciples the impending doom that is facing Jesus if Jesus carries on the way he has been with the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the temple elders. You know, bearing in mind at the beginning of Holy Week, we mark Jesus coming in triumphantly on the donkey with Palm Sunday. And then there's the sort of cleansing of the temple that we get and in John's Gospel. And, you know, Jesus sort of really bringing to a head the conflict between him and the religious leaders of the time. And Judas sees this and is fearful for his friend and master. And somehow in his head, he decides that Jesus needs to be stopped for his own good and, in a sense, the good of the people, because he is starting to hear and to worry that what the consequences might be in the sense of the Roman authorities and such like. And, you know, we see violent uprisings or things that get out of hand, and I'm not suggesting that, you know, that's what Jesus was suggesting, but it's very easy how people then reinterpret something and decide. So Judas was seeing this and was very concerned. So what he believed, or what he felt, was that if he betrayed Jesus to the temple authorities or to the Roman authorities, what would happen is that Jesus would be arrested, he would probably be flogged or taught a lesson, and that Jesus would snap out of it, you know, and no harm would come to him and no harm would come to others. As I say, that's not the gospel or theological understanding. This was a very interesting interpretation in a film. And that's what he does, and he betrays Jesus. But of course it goes horribly, horribly wrong, because you can't stop the will of God. And of course that results in the horrific scene later on where Judas takes his own life because he feels so broken by the fact that not only has he betrayed his very close friend, but his own thinking was misguided and he completely misjudged the situation. And as a result, he now feels responsible, completely responsible for Jesus's death on the cross. Now, though that's not obviously clearly a strictly orthodox theological interpretation of Judas from the Gospels, it is one that I found very, very powerful and worth reflecting on, because the writer of the book, The Last Temptation of Christ, a Japanese writer, what he wanted to do was, he wasn't trying to sort of be a Franco Zeffirelli and retell the story of Jesus. He was trying to sort of put himself into the sandals of the characters that were there, and trying to understand what might have been going through people's minds, and trying to see how, if he was in that situation, how he would have reacted. So that was how he was coming at it. Of course, it was completely misinterpreted by people who watched the film. And I think that's an interesting thing, because I know in my own lifetime I have betrayed people. I have betrayed people or friends who have often been quite close to me, not necessarily for hurtful reasons, not necessarily deliberately to go out and hurt them, but because of my own misguided interpretation or understanding of a situation that we have found ourselves in. And as a priest, as a clergyman, when I also listen to stories about, broken relationships, and believe me, I'm not perfect. There are broken relationships in my family with friends. It's a human condition, sadly. But when I hear people telling me about the situations they've been in the broken relationships and things, it's very rarely, to be honest with you, that somebody has just been purely downright evil and nasty and done something horrible to somebody for the sake of doing something horrible. Yes, of course that happens, but that's not often the case. What I often discover as I listen to the stories is that a situation arose, other emotions came into it, people misread the situation and what was going on, and then in a sense acted in a way, it might have been a knee-jerk reaction, or they acted in a way, and in a sense that has resulted in a betrayal or a brokenness in that relationship. Now, believe me, as a human being, I found myself in that situation several times, and I'm sure I will do again, because we're not fallible. But the interesting thing on reflecting about that story of Judas is that we all have the capacity, and we do betray those who are close to us, sometimes for what we might think are the right reasons, and we might even necessarily be doing it through some sort of notion in our own mind that in doing this we're sort of trying to help them or support them. Let me, in a sense, give you a classic example that I get. So you have two friends, and one of the friends is in a relationship with somebody else. It could be a man or a woman. It makes no difference at this point. You could be talking about two male friends or two female friends. So let's say it's a female, and she's in a relationship with a man, and the other friend, sees aspects of that relationship that they feel could be destructive to their friend. Like the man in that relationship isn't treating her well, isn't being kind to her, etc., etc., those sorts of things. And in a sense, partly through a sort of a loyalty and a love of that friend, that causes tension between those two friends, because, you know, as they say sometimes, love is love is blind, and you know, you find yourself, you've got a partner, and you might not necessarily see them in that full light. And what happens is that relationship between those two friends, those two ladies, starts to disintegrate, because only one of them is seeing something they perceive to be destructive in the other relationship. And then that then can often sort of cycle into sometimes a sort of an act of betrayal. Something happens, a bust up between those two friends. And we see that all the time, and I'm sure we've all experienced that. And in a sense, it's the ability to be able to step back from that and to rebuild that relationship. Now, of course, the important thing is it isn't only Judas who betrays Jesus. Peter betrays Jesus. And what's more, Peter betrays Jesus 3 times. Now, okay, he doesn't hand him over to the authorities like Judas does. But as we mark in the Holy Week story, when Jesus is arrested and taken away, you know, Peter follows at a distance, and 3 times he's asked if he is a friend or a colleague or one of the disciples of Jesus. And because he's so afraid of what is happening and what might happen to him, he betrays Jesus 3 times. So you have these 2 characters, Judas and Peter, who both betray Jesus in different ways. Of course, sadly, in a sense, what happens to Judas is there's no redemption in Judas's situation, because Judas in the end takes matters into his own hands, feels so distraught, so bereft of what he has done, that he takes his own life. We will only know, in a sense, how Judas was redeemed when we enter the kingdom of heaven. Peter, on the other hand, does not do this, but he goes through all those feelings of guilt and betrayal and everything else. And of course, as I have on my study wall, it's one of the most powerful pieces of artwork I have from the nuns at Turvey Abbey. There is then later on, as we move through the gospel stories and the resurrection, the encounter with Jesus and Peter, where Jesus says to Peter, you know, Peter, do you love me? Feed my sheep. So for the 3 betrayals, there is these 3 acts of forgiveness, and this relationship is restored. So I think that's a very powerful sort of message in this Holy Week story, in a sense of how easily, you know, we might point a finger at Judas, and we might, you know, go, and we do like, it's always good. We like pointing fingers at others because it sort of takes the heat off us. But the thing is with Judas, you know, if we're really honest with ourselves, many of us may have found ourselves in a sort of a situation like that, where for a misguided understanding of the situation, a misinterpretation of what is going on, we end up betraying a friend. But let's, in a sense, and that will happen, it's the fact of life, but let's not be like Judas, who in a sense doesn't, you know, he doesn't see the resurrection, which is in a sense the sadness. So he doesn't see God's power and glory and redemption that happens through the resurrection. Peter does, and though Peter has betrayed Jesus, of course, the restorative, redemptive, merciful love and glory of God through Jesus in the resurrection restores Peter and restores their relationship. So yeah, Judas is worth reflecting on, and those relationships and the times that we have maybe betrayed people, or they're broken and such like. So the story and the reading for today. Anyhow, folks, do have a good day. As I say, there won't be a broadcast tomorrow because I have to go and take my mother to hospital. But I will do a broadcast Good Friday morning, and then obviously we will be into the sort of run of the Easter weekend services and celebrations, and I hope you can join me for that. Let's just say the grace. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen. Take care, folks. Have a good day.